Done with week one of the 2025 Women's ODI World Cup. Lots of storylines emerging already. What can we unpack for you? We've got the whole crew lined up here. Firdose Moonda has pledged to not make any more predictions for the rest of this World Cup owing to one particular event from week one. Sudarshanan has been our man on the ground in Guwahati for week one, and Raunak Kapoor has been our man on pretty much every ground. And I think at this point, he has taken more flights than there have been matches at this World Cup so far. So, welcome on board, everyone. Lots of storylines. Let's start with India because only two teams so far have played two completed matches. That is India and Pakistan. Australia and Sri Lanka, of course, had a washout. India with two wins in two, Ronak. But is it fair to say it's been scratchier than one may have imagined against Sri Lanka and Pakistan?
Absolutely. I think if we expected India to start this tournament with all this sublime form of the batters and high expectations, that they'll almost hit the ground running and have two dominating wins given the two fixtures they had, Sri Lanka and then Pakistan with their record. It was a bit of a reality check, and it may not be the worst thing. It will make this team think a little bit about what their ideal balance is going to be when they play bigger teams. I was going to say South Africa is one of those bigger teams, but now I don't know for those. And at the same time, I'll just put in one rider here. India basically have just shown that once Smriti Mandhana's wicket falls early, there are problems. The rate is not where it should be in the middle overs. That might come to bite them in those bigger games. As long as you're winning 260 or 250 or even limping your way to a score which your bowlers will defend against a weaker batting, you get away with all that. But that might come to bite them. So I think Smriti needs to find form fast. I don't think it's as much of a concern, only given the other takeaway I have is that Guwahati and Colombo might be the two venues where we might see batters find it a little more difficult. What I saw in Indore scares me with how flat it is over there. And I think Visakhapatnam will play the same way, and all of India's games are going to be over there. And then Navi Mumbai, which we also know plays exactly the same way. So for me, India's batting would be the biggest question for a lot of fans right now. Oh my God, is there an issue? There was a collapse in both games. But I see that getting better as India go to better batting venues.
Yeah, I think the hope from the outside will be that in tournament play, you hope for your team as well as your stars to start peaking at the right time. And that's what India will hope for both Smriti Mandhana and Harmanpreet Kaur, who are yet to make a big impact. But so what that does mean is that we've seen India's middle order twice bail them out from precarious positions. Deepti and Amanjot exceptional against Sri Lanka, and then a more combined effort headed by Richa Ghosh against Pakistan.
Correct, and that is a welcome sight for me. I know the shortcomings of the top order isn't ideal. Two games into a home World Cup, but the fact that the lower order is taking them to a score that they themselves, it's the bowlers and the all rounders there are defending, is a big positive. Again, we've always almost cried that India have fallen short at big stages because of these contribution being absent. And two games, two pressure games, let me tell you, because first game there was a record crowd in Guwahati, 22,800 odd. And the fact that it was pretty loud, even for a crowd of that number, for Amanjot and Deepti to do that. And even yesterday, even in Colombo against Pakistan, the fact that those lower contributions with Richa Ghosh finally coming to party, I mean, she was absent from pretty much batting in the Australia series. The fact that these pieces of puzzles are falling together for India, it kind of bodes well with bigger games like Australia, South Africa, and England to follow.
Yeah, Firdaus, just allow me to complete this India thread with Ronak before I ask you about the opponent's perspective on India. Uh, some boxes tick. The bowling looks solid. Deepti's had three furs in both games. But the second game in particular against Pakistan, Ronak, there was some sloppiness. I mean, there was a burnt review to start the innings. There were three missed reviews, and I don't know how many dropped catches, to be fair. Those are mistakes that you won't get away with in the matches that are coming up.
No, you won't. And you can only hope and assume from an Indian point of view that those mistakes were supposed to happen in these games, where in spite of those errors and those moments of untidiness, India was still far too good for those two particular oppositions, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. I think, like Sud said, I think this is actually a good thing for India. Two really easy wins might have kind of, you never know where the team sort of stands, but I think the team is well aware now that this is going to be tough. And we know we have areas we need to sort of polish. And I think we'll see a slightly more clinical India as the tournament goes deeper. I have no problems with you. You use the term rightly, Yash. ideally you want India to be peaking at the right time. If they started really well, it's harder for a team to try and understand, a team like India to kind of figure the lows from the highs. If they start like that and then they get, maybe they could drop points against South Africa, forget Australia. Maybe it could happen against England because at Indore it's possible with the way England has started. Who knows? But I think this will hold them in good stead. And I think I think we've seen the most untidy games behind us now. That's what I'd like to believe.
Right. It is the run of games that India has next. It's South Africa, Australia, England, New Zealand in that order, which you knew, without meaning any disrespect to the other teams, were the four toughest games. For those, what would the idea be for the other teams? Having seen these few issues for India where they've not been the most convincing, how are other teams looking at India 1 week into the competition?
Yeah, I think that the other teams will see an advantage, especially in the Indian top order. We've spoken about Smriti Mandana's form, and I think that's quite a big concern. I know you guys are saying maybe she'll peak at the right time, but I also think their handling of the reviews, and I watched the Pakistan game yesterday, out of interest for everything that was going to happen. I couldn't believe how many times they didn't review. I know they burned one early on, but they could have had Pakistan all out for what, 80, 90? Had they taken those reviews and also held on to their catches. So it wasn't just the catching. I saw some really bad misfields out in the deep as well, which concerned me about the way India went about the game. And maybe, that game was difficult. There were all those, what we call mukhis, and you call, I don't know, flying ants, termites. Well, what were they? It was a difficult match in terms of those types of conditions. But to me, India don't look as fluid as I thought they would at the beginning of the tournament, especially given it's a home tournament and they want to make a big statement. So this is a really massive run, the 4 games that you mentioned. And I have to say, I only come on the show today actually to redeem myself after making some very bold predictions in our opener. And I felt extremely embarrassed watching South Africa play their first game. They've also got a tough run. It's New Zealand and India.
Yes.
And if things don't go well, they could be out of the tournament pretty much before it begins.
Fantastic, because that is exactly where we go next. We are recording this on Monday, a few hours before South Africa and New Zealand face off in what is an important game for both teams. New Zealand, of course, lost to Australia, but South Africa, does saying they lost to England cut the story of that contest, Firdose?
No, that was really horrible. It was an absolute disaster of a game. I couldn't believe what I saw from South Africa's batters. No footwork at all. They looked very surprised to see Lindsay Smith opening the bowling, and it turned out they weren't surprised. It turned out they'd actually been practicing for that, which probably makes it even worse. And they just didn't look like the team that we know, and I felt really, really silly watching that game. I also felt really bad for them. A blowout at the start of the tournament like that. England's net run rate has absolutely ballooned, and we know it could come down to net run rate. 5 teams, maybe 6, could be fighting for those places. And I really think that they would be very, very, very upset with how they performed. And they're going to have to do not even a little better. They're going to have to do a hell of a lot better. I think leaving out Annery Dirksen was surprising. I know that they've got a tricky batting lineup. They don't know where to fit in Sune Lees, Annika Bosch, Chloe Tryon. They want to play all the all-rounders, but maybe that's not the best idea. And they've set themselves up for a really difficult week. I mean, the other silly thing that I said was that I thought Pakistan would surprise us all. And I'm very disappointed with how their batting has gone as well. We've seen 2 poor batting performances, especially that one against Bangladesh, bowled out for 129. Young Marufa Akhtar hooping the ball like a banana out in Colombo. But Pakistan are better than that. And we've seen it. They've got some excellent bowling. Diana Beg's looking fabulous. And I'm just not winning at this tournament. It might be a good thing that I stayed at home.
I'll tell you who was happy on Friday. It was Sudarshanan, because he got a half day in Guwahati, and maybe even less than a half day, given how long that game lasted. But Sudarshanan, the handling of South Africa, the way they failed to handle spin, would be a huge concern for them, considering we expect the pitches to suit spin even more going ahead in the tournament.
And right, like Raunak mentioned at the top, these 2 venues, Guwahati and Indore, seem to be pretty similar in the way the games have panned out so far. In the sense, the new ball pretty much comes onto the bat nicely. With the sun baking down as it does, it then tends to slow down a little bit in the middle overs. We saw it in India, Sri Lanka. we couldn't see it in England, South Africa, because South Africa were undone much before that. So it wasn't the pitch that was playing tricks to make it clear in South Africa's case, but the fact that they couldn't counter Lindsay Smith's non-turner sets the tournament up nicely, because there are teams with a lot of left arm spin. New Zealand probably may not have one when they play in indoor, but then there's Eden Carson who could do the thing that Lindsay Smith did. Of course, there's Amelia Kerr. So I won't immediately rule them out, because we saw last edition in 2022, England were 3 out of 3 down. They lost first 3 games, but they recovered and made the finals. So we still can safely say that losing first 3 games is not absolutely disastrous. There can be a way back, but yeah, there are tough games in store for South Africa.
I'll just quickly throw in one thing on South Africa is they're already in must-win territory. And I say that only because they're going to play 2 of their games in Colombo against Pakistan and Sri Lanka just before they close out the league stage against Australia. Now, Colombo's weather is not reliable. And South Africa, if there was ever a team to encounter some unfortunate weather, so you have to keep those points. They'll back themselves to get 4 points against Sri Lanka and Pakistan in Colombo. So if even you end up getting 3 points and say one of those games goes off, you then have Australia in your last game. So it may not be as easy for Laura Bulbart and her team to finish with that run, which means they must beat New Zealand. But by the time this is recorded, we'll know their fate. I don't think they're going to be. I actually think they're going to be a better team as a result of that 69 all out. There's no way. She stated the obvious.
Can't be much worse, can they, Raunak?
Yeah, we're not a better team than that. So I'm just saying that they're in must-win territory. I wouldn't rule out that they might even upset India, because they're really on sort of that territory now. If they drop points from here, it could very well just be, a tournament where we know the top 4 halfway through the league phase.
Yeah. Yes, can I just comment on England, who we hadn't spoken about them at all in our preview show. They didn't even come up as potential semi-finalists.
To be fair, we did give them the chance, but our England correspondent Valkyrie Baines ruled it out herself, saying, I don't expect them to do much.
She's
But what a
still
start.
an Aussie, even though she's based in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. But from what I saw from them, never mind the Lindsay Smith performance that we've spoken about, but to see Natseva Brunt bowling again, she took a wicket with her first ball. She bowled. She also then took a wicket in her second over. So that was really good to see. We didn't get to see Heather Knight. She wasn't needed. But also the way they approached that chase. They were very conservative in the power play. And, 70 runs to get, you'd think just go bish, bash, bosh. But then once they got out of the power play, to see how Amy Jones and Tammy Beaumont sort of took on the last, 4 overs? 14 overs was the end of the chase. I really liked what we saw from some of the stroke play there. So I wonder if we don't have to go back and revise. I mean, I would like to record that preview show all over again, to be honest. But maybe England are actually proper semi-final contenders, and we just didn't know that.
Yeah, they've got a net run rate touching 4 thanks to the margin of victory, and they play Bangladesh and Sri Lanka in this second week. So England will hope to be in a position where they could potentially be 6 points by the end of week 2. Australia, they didn't have to prove anything to anyone, but they still, Raunak, managed to flex their muscles by reaching 326 after being 128 for 5.
It's amazing. And when I watched that game, it just reinforces how scary this Australian team will be, because New Zealand had a chance, and that's perhaps as much of a chance as you'll get with Australia. Your best case scenario might be getting them 120 for 5, but how many teams can actually then go on and kill the game there? And even at 120 for 5, I saw how India reacted to 120 for 5, and then it was about shut shop. Amanjot played really well. She was also dropped. Sri Lanka dropped some catches, but I think the whole game there was right. Let's just, risk averse 3 or 4 on over, odd boundary, take it to 230 if we get lucky. And if we do have a position where Raunak can come in and smash a quick fire 30-40, we'll get something more. Australia, didn't matter. It didn't matter they were 5 down. They were still looking, they were getting 5-6 and over with ridiculous ease. Ash Gardner was looking for a boundary and then reacting for a single. And that is pretty much everyone around them. Even when Sophie Molyneux comes in, it's not like, I just have to hold one end up, which sometimes Aditi Sharma can do, or Harleen Deol tends to do. There was no change in their game plan because they were their side down with half the game left. And I think they just exude this attitude of, we know how to win this. We're here to win the World Cup. And I love the chit chat of, oh, India going to be really strong from Melissa Healy. Oh, they're such a good team. Australia are far, head and shoulders above any other team. And
Yeah.
that New Zealand game was not an easy game for them. So for me, I would have loved to see them actually play in Colombo because I wanted to see the best batting lineup in the tournament play at Colombo where it's not been as easy. So we didn't get to see that. But they will play a game against Pakistan in Colombo in a few days' time. So we'll get an
Yeah.
idea over there to whatever degree. But I don't know what their weakness is. They didn't play Megan Schutt, and that surprised a lot of us. I asked Julia Price the other day, do they have a weakness? And she said, maybe too many bowling options, which, as weaknesses go, is not so bad. So it will take someone playing their A game to beat Australia and hope that Australia find themselves in these situations with a few unforced errors, which they did against New Zealand, and you don't let them off the hook then. So I think that is what this tournament will eventually come down to. Somebody who can add a killer instinct to their game against Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Too many bowling options and batting depth, which sees the eighth wicket stand go at eights and add 70 runs. 180 added in 25 overs by their wickets 6, 7, and 8. That's how good Australia were. Wash out against Sri Lanka. They now have Pakistan. And then this week closes out with India versus Australia in Visakhapatnam. So that's a run. Weigh in on New Zealand. I mean, of course, they don't want to read too much into a game against Australia, but it could be worrying that the only contributions came from the established names. Tahuhu and Melly Kerr with the ball, and Sophie Devine alone with the bat.
I think that game kind of encapsulates how New Zealand have been in the format for the last 2 years. Yes, they haven't played a lot, but the games they've played, there's been a lot of inconsistency throughout that batting order. In fact, we see the numbers that Sophie Devine averages close to 47 for 15 with the bat, but those are 2 centuries and a 50s. But other than that, those numbers aren't too big and too consistent. For New Zealand to, I guess, push for that top 4 spot, and I know we are very early in this competition to say this, they will really have their batters to do the heavy lifting because, like Raunak said, tracks in Vizag are going to be flat. We know the DY Patil and how it plays out. So this is going to be a batting competition, and New Zealand's batters, and we know they can do it. Georgia Plymouth is a superb stroke player. Amelia Kerr can turn the game on its head with her bat as well as with the ball. And Bates, Devine, Brooke Halliday, we saw how crucial a knock she played in the T20 World Cup final last year. That number is just reduced to a number in the scorecard. But for those who watched that game, very well know the importance of that knock and those conditions. So they have the game to just thrive in these conditions. But it's a matter of that execution, and maybe tonight against South Africa will tell us how the World Cup will be for them.
All right, we will wait to see. Firdose will hope that New Zealand don't show any of their good signs against South Africa. But I do want to
leave out Bangladesh again. I feel like I should be
I'm nowhere close to done. I don't get why you think that I won't bring up Bangladesh. I know too well how many Bangladesh people watch our content. I will never leave them out, despite what you're trying. I want you to go there now. Bangladesh versus Pakistan. That was about as pumping a start to the tournament Bangladesh could have hoped to have. Marufa Akhtar setting the tone, and then the spinners took over.
Yeah, that was such a great performance from Bangladesh. And I think some of us, or some sort of headlines said upset. And, of course, given that Pakistan were undefeated through the qualifiers, it might have looked like an upset. But then watching it on the day, it actually felt like Bangladesh are the much stronger side. And if we saw what they've got in terms of their bowling, I think we said pre-tournament, it's a really nice, varied bowling attack. To see it in action like that was fantastic. Marufa is looking fabulous. From what we saw of her at the 2023 T20 World Cup, a scrawny little girl who had a lot of ambition. Now you can see there's muscle there, there's power, the pace is up, she knows what she's doing, she flexes her biceps and tells us all that, she's really worked on getting strong. And really, I think it's such a great success story. They've got so many spin options. They had 3 leg spinners, an off spinner, and a left arm spinner against Pakistan. So they can throw everything at an opposition. And, I know that we shouldn't be, I just talked up England, but I think if there's a team that could lose to Bangladesh, and I've seen this before, it's a team like in England who think that they're going to be able to just walk over them and might not be able to, probably South Africa as well. I would have liked to see a little bit more of go forward from Bangladesh's batting lineup. So they were in some ways very cautious in that chase. They could have got it done much quicker, and that might have helped their net run rate. But, they not often in winning positions like that. And I think there was that level of caution. I think they'll be quite good through this tournament, which probably means they're going to lose the next 6 games, and I'll have to come back on the show to tell everybody why I got that one wrong too. So
But
sorry,
yeah,
Bangladesh. Tried so hard.
It's good
but
that
there's
you've
also
started. Go on, sir.
yeah. Yeah, there's also this thing about gauging how good a bowler is by looking at how she bowls at her teammates, because that is essentially whom you train with day in and day out in the lead up to the to games and tournaments and whatnot. So every single weakness or strengths of yours, your teammates would know. But in the nets, I was closely watching those nets ahead of the Bangladesh game. She was beating Nigar Sultana Jyoti for pace. I mean, that's how good she is. I am sure Nigar Sultana would have played
Yes.
a lot of Marufa Akhtar over the years. But the fact that she could do that in an indoor nets, remember there was rain around, so team trained indoor, so your external conditions won't, hamper the pitch, etc. But the fact that she was getting the better of her captain told me that, I mean, this is a special player. We just like love to watch her play.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
special start in that contest, and I'll also give props to the way she ended the contest in that post-match presentation where she said something to the tune of "It's me versus me." That is the big battle for me. Raunak, Sri Lanka, they pushed India, and without meaning any disrespect, they have managed to gain a point thanks to that no result against Australia. Given what we saw in Game One, is this a team that has shown signs of troubling others?
I wish we would have seen game two because I really want to
Mm.
see how Sri Lanka play in Colombo this time of year. And I say this time of year because I had chatted with Harleen Deol ahead of the India Pakistan game. That tri series that India, South Africa, and Sri Lanka had, where we were getting 300 pluses easy, that was April, May. And she made the point, she's saying it's very different. Like, this is not the tri series conditions that we had at the same ground. And simply put, yeah, it's not going to be as easy to bat here. And I think that is where you ask, do Sri Lanka have it to dig out, grind out results when they rely heavily on pretty much two batters? If I can say that, Vishmi's not really had a big impact in a while, and Chamari and Harshita are the two players that they will bank on every time that they need to get a win. So I I'm torn on Sri Lanka. I think the India game is a really good opportunity for them to keep India to something between 260 and 270. And then, we would have seen if they would have still managed to make a game out of it, even if they lose a Chamari. It will take individual brilliance. I think it's the same story to a degree. It's not just Chamari, but it's probably probably Harshita and maybe contributions here and there. I think to just keep the same conversation, and I agree with Firdose in a way. I'm off to the England Bangladesh game now. I'll join Sudin Guwahati. That's an interesting game because that is Bangladesh's template. Bowl first, Marufa Akhtar gets the ball to move, and you can manage to. They fielded really well against Pakistan. If they can keep a team to 180, 200, and then your batters know that there's a chance we can win this over here, that's an interesting one. I really want to see how Marufa bowls to Tammy Beaumont with the ball moving in Guwahati. So if things go their way, Bangladesh have the upset in them a little more than Sri Lanka is just what I feel right now. Uh, Sri Lanka also play a lot of the games in Colombo. We may not necessarily see a lot of full games there. So I think, yeah, if Sri Lanka would have won that opening game, I think it would have just thrown the entire World Cup upside down. But but I think that moment is gone now, and maybe they got a bonus point against Australia. But I am more confident about Bangladesh picking up a few more points in this league phase than Sri Lanka.
All right. I'm a little lost for what to do because usually this is when we throw it open to predictions, but no one's going to do that anymore.
Maybe
And
why don't I throw it
Zero
to
predictions.
players to watch out for? Because I think in this first
go on.
week, the one thing I'm going to say is that Kranti Gaur, I think we already had her in our Cricinfo pre-tournament players to watch out for, or uncapped or first-time World Cuppers. She's bowling unbelievably well, and she just seems to be bossing this level. She doesn't care that she's at a World Cup. She's going to be India's frontline seamer. At times, they may not even play Renuka. And when you said, Yash, that their bowling is in good health or good form, yeah, but there's still a concern on 5 bowling options against strong
Mm.
oppositions at batting friendly venues. So they're going to have to figure that out at some point. And I still don't think they're going to sacrifice a batter with 2 games where the batting
Yeah.
has actually found themselves in a bit of a hole. So this is a big challenge for Amol Mazumdar and Harmanpreet Kaur. And I wait to see how they figure it out. But for me, Kranti Gaur is going to be right up there. I'm predicting her to finish as the tournament's highest wicket taker.
Oh, that'd be some story. A woman who just debuted in May, less than
Yep.
10 games under her belt. And I also quite enjoyed her look to Harmanpreet Kaur after taking that second wicket, almost suggesting Bola Thana when she
Yeah.
asked for that second slip. So good on her and good on you all. Thank you so much. Keep covering this World Cup, and we'll be doing this every week. If I continue this any further, we may be disrupting broadcast plans. So Raunak, you're free to go now. Firdose, Suds, everyone, thank you so much for your time. See you next week.